The glass in my hand almost slipped when my aunt's sharp laugh cut across the table. "There she is, our forever single girl," Aunt Linda sneered, her wine swirling like it was part of the performance. "Emily, honey, maybe one day you'll finally bring a man home instead of excuses." Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us where are you from and from which city you're watching our videos. And after watching the whole video, don't forget to tell us, what would you do in this situation? Be honest. Tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. The whole dining room erupted. Forks clinked, my cousin smirked, and my father shook his head with a sigh, pretending to be disappointed. My younger sister, Rachel, leaned back in her chair, her voice dripping with mockery. "Come on, Em. Admit it. Love just isn't for you. Some women are meant to marry and some—" She paused, scanning me from head to toe like I was some kind of spectacle. "Are just meant to be alone." My stomach nodded, but I didn't flinch. They'd been doing this for years, every family gathering turning into a spectacle at my expense. The jokes, the smirks, the constant reminders that in their eyes, I was destined to fail. But what they never knew, what none of them had ever even suspected, was that I wasn't just dating. I wasn't trying to find someone. I was already married, and not to just anyone. I pressed my lips together, trying not to smirk. If they knew who was waiting outside, they'd choke on every cruel word they'd ever thrown at me. Rachel leaned forward, her nails tapping against her wine glass, eyes glittering with cruelty. "What is it, Emily? You're awfully quiet tonight. No mysterious boyfriend stories to feed us? Or did he vanish into thin air too?" That was the moment the doorbell rang. The sound sliced through the room like a blade. Every head turned. My mother frowned, annoyed. Who could that be? Rachel, still smirking, got up and strutted to the door. She yanked it open with that same arrogance, ready to dismiss whoever was on the other side. But then her face froze. Her eyes widened. Her lips parted, but no sound came out, because standing there, tall, composed, and effortlessly commanding, was my husband, Daniel. His presence filled the doorway like a storm. Broad-shouldered, dark-haired, his tailored suit clinging perfectly to his frame. He wasn't smiling. His eyes, sharp and cold, swept over Rachel and then past her, locking directly onto me. The silence in the room turned suffocating. Rachel staggered back a step, her hand still gripping the doorknob like she needed it to stay upright. Wait. You're... Daniel stepped inside without asking permission, his hand sliding to the small of my back with a quiet, protective claim. The entire family stared, jaws unhinged, as if reality itself had betrayed them. I finally let myself smile. "Everyone, meet my husband." The color drained from my father's face. Aunt Linda's glass slipped from her hand and shattered against the floor. But Rachel? She just stood frozen, her voice trembling as she finally whispered the words that turned the room into complete chaos. "Emily, you're married to him?" The air in the dining room had gone still, like every breath had been stolen the moment Daniel walked in. Rachel's smirk had vanished, her jaw tight, her eyes darting between me and the man who now stood with his hand steady against my back. For once, she had no clever insult. My father, Richard, cleared his throat, trying to reassert control. "Emily, what is this? Some kind of joke?" His voice shook slightly, betraying the calm facade he always tried to wear. I tilted my head, savoring the tremor in his voice. "No, Dad, not a joke. This is my husband." Daniel's gaze swept across the table, calm but unrelenting. The weight of it made my cousins avert their eyes. Aunt Linda, usually the loudest voice in the room, pressed her lips into a thin line, her fingers trembling as she tried to pick up her shattered wineglass pieces. Rachel finally found her voice. "Married? To him?" Her voice cracked, and her hand flew to her chest like she was struggling to breathe. "Emily, do you even understand who—" Daniel's deep baritone cut her off. "She understands perfectly." His voice carried authority that made every head snap back to him. "And I suggest you remember whose home you're standing in before you continue disrespecting her." The room shifted. They all knew what that meant. Margaret, my mother, looked between us with wide eyes. Emily, why didn't you tell us? Her tone wasn't motherly concern. It was sharp, almost accusatory, as if I had betrayed them by keeping this secret. I gave her a steady look. Because you never would have believed me. You've spent years laughing at me, calling me hopeless, reminding me I'd never be good enough for anyone. Why would I share the most important part of my life with people who only take pleasure in tearing me down? The silence was deafening. Daniel's hand squeezed my back gently, grounding me, and when he spoke again, his voice was steel. I've listened long enough. Emily deserves better than the treatment she's received here. You mocked her, doubted her, and all the while she was building a life far beyond your shallow imagination. Richard stood, trying to reclaim authority. His voice was louder now, but not steadier. Look, Daniel, or Mr. Carter, whatever name you go by, I don't care who you are. She's still my daughter, and I deserve an explanation. This secrecy? It's unacceptable. I couldn't help the laugh that escaped me, a laugh full of bitterness I had swallowed for years. Unacceptable? Dad, what's unacceptable is the way you paraded my failures at every dinner table. You made me your family's punchline. And now you think you deserve answers? Rachel's face turned red, her voice sharp with desperation. You could have told me. Me, your sister. Instead, I had to find out like this, opening the door and seeing him standing there. Do you even realize how humiliating this is for us? I turned to her slowly. Humiliating for you? Rachel, you built your self-worth on putting me down. Every insult, every snide laugh, every eye roll, you lived for it. Maybe now you'll finally understand how it feels to be on the other side. Daniel's presence loomed beside me, and when his eyes fixed on Rachel, she dropped her gaze instantly. Aunt Linda finally piped up, though her voice was weaker than usual. Emily, dear, we only teased because, well, we worried about you. You're so sensitive. My lips curved into a sharp smile. No, Aunt Linda, you weren't worried. You were entertained. I was the family's entertainment, the tension crackled. Forks lay abandoned on plates. Glasses stood untouched. No one dared move. Then Daniel pulled me slightly closer, his voice carrying finality. I think we've stayed long enough. Emily doesn't need to explain herself. You don't deserve the truth she's given you tonight. I felt my chest swell, not just with relief, but with power I had never been allowed to feel in this house. For once, they weren't laughing at me. For once, they were the ones left scrambling for words. Richard stepped forward, his face flushed with anger. Emily, don't you dare walk out that door. You're still part of this family. And if you think you can just parade around here, Daniel's voice sliced through his like thunder. Careful. One word, low but commanding, froze my father in place. His fists clenched, but he didn't move another inch. I looked back one last time, meeting their stunned, pale faces. You spent years mocking me. Years. And yet, all this time, I was living a life you couldn't even dream of. Tonight, the jokes are over. And with that, Daniel and I turned toward the door together. The sound of my heels clicking against the hardwood was the only thing breaking the suffocating silence. My sister's breathless whisper followed us out, fragile, trembling, and filled with disbelief. She really married him. The night air hit my face like freedom when Daniel and I stepped out of that suffocating house. The headlights of his black SUV cast a glow across the driveway. My heart was still hammering from the way my father's voice had trembled, the way Rachel had stared at Daniel as if she'd seen a ghost. But before we reached the car, the front door flew open. Emily, wait! Rachel's voice cracked as she stumbled out onto the porch. Her arms were wrapped around herself, as if the autumn chill had finally found her. Daniel paused, his hand tightening protectively around mine. His eyes flicked back, sharp, cautious. Rachel's gaze darted to him, then back to me, her tone no longer mocking but desperate. I didn't know. If I'd known it was you... She trailed off, her face pale. Why didn't you tell us who your husband is? Daniel didn't flinch. His voice was calm but cold. Because it was none of your business. Rachel's lips trembled. He's Daniel Carter. She spoke the name like it was a confession. Her eyes glistened in the porch light. The same Daniel Carter who... She stopped herself, looking at me, then quickly at him, like even saying it out loud might get her in trouble. I tilted my head, studying her. What's wrong, Rachel? Suddenly speechless? You never had a problem finding words when it came to mocking me. Her shoulders slumped, and for the first time in years, I saw fear instead of arrogance. You don't understand, Emily. He's powerful. People don't cross him. Daniel's silence said more than her words ever could. Rachel's voice broke into a whisper. Dad knew. That's why he looked like that in there. He recognized you. He always said if we ever came face to face with you, we needed to... She stopped again, shaking her head. I blinked, stunned. My father knew who Daniel was. All those years mocking me, dismissing me, calling me a failure. He'd known. My chest burned with a mix of fury and betrayal. So he wasn't just mocking me for fun. He wanted me to stay small, invisible. He didn't want me to know what I already had. Rachel bit her lip, her voice trembling. Emily, please, you don't know what kind of man you married. Daniel finally turned fully toward her. The porch light caught the sharp cut of his jaw, the steady fire in his eyes. And yet I've never once raised my voice to your sister. I've never once treated her the way you all did. Ask yourself, who's the real danger here? Rachel flinched, her face crumbling. She had no answer. I stepped forward, my words sharp. Rachel, do you hear yourself? You're terrified of a man who's only ever shown me love and respect. But you weren't afraid to tear me apart for years. That tells me everything I need to know about this family's definition of danger. Rachel's eyes filled with tears. But Daniel tugged me gently toward the SUV. We're done here. But as we opened the car door, another figure emerged from the house. My father? Emily! Richard's voice bellowed across the driveway. His face was red, his steps uneven, like he was fighting a war inside himself. Don't leave like this. You don't understand who you're dealing with. I spun around, my anger boiling over. No, Dad, you don't understand. For years you told me I was nothing, that I'd never have anyone, that I was destined to fail. And all along you knew exactly who I was married to. You kept me in the shadows on purpose. Richard's voice faltered, but he tried to regain control. I only wanted to protect you. Protect me? My voice shook with fury. By humiliating me? By letting my sister and aunt tear me apart every time I walked into this house? That's not protection. That's cruelty. Daniel's hand brushed my shoulder, steadying me, but his own gaze was like ice as he addressed my father. Richard, I warned you years ago that if you ever stood in the way of Emily's happiness, you'd regret it. Tonight is your reminder. The blood drained from my father's face. His lips pressed into a thin, trembling line. He opened his mouth, but no words came. The weight of the silence between them was suffocating. My mother stood in the doorway now, clutching the frame with pale fingers, her expression frozen between fear and disbelief. I turned to Daniel, my voice softer, though it carried all the fire of years suppressed. Let's go. I've wasted enough of my life proving myself to people who never deserved to know me. Daniel opened the passenger door, his eyes still locked on my father. She doesn't need this house. She doesn't need your approval. She has me, and that's more than you'll ever give her. I slid into the seat, my heart pounding, the sound of my father's heavy breathing following me like an echo of the past. Daniel closed the door firmly, the final barrier between me and the family that had caged me for so long. As the engine roared to life, I glanced back through the tinted glass. Rachel stood frozen, her arms wrapped around herself, her lips moving soundlessly. My mother leaned against the doorway, her face pale. And my father? He just stood there, staring at the car, as if everything he had built, the control, the ridicule, the power, had finally crumbled in one night. And for the first time, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel ashamed. I felt unstoppable. The hum of the SUV's engine filled the night as Daniel pulled us onto the empty road. My hands trembled in my lap, not from fear but from the storm of adrenaline coursing through me. For the first time in years, I wasn't swallowing my words. I wasn't sitting in silence while they tore me apart. I had spoken, and they had finally listened. But one question lingered in the pit of my stomach. "Daniel," I whispered, staring out the window at the blur of streetlights. "My father knew you." "Rachel knew you. Why are they so afraid of you?" Daniel's jaw flexed as his hands tightened around the wheel. His eyes stayed on the road, his voice low but steady. "Because your father once worked for me, and he betrayed me." My head snapped toward him. "What?" He finally glanced at me, his gaze softening only for me. "Years ago, Richard came to me for investment money. I gave him a chance, trusted him with resources most men only dream of. But he squandered it, lied, cut corners, tried to walk away like I'd never find out. When I did, I gave him one warning: never stand in the way of anyone I cared about. The pieces slammed into place in my mind. My father's pale face, his trembling voice, his desperate attempt to control me. He had been terrified all along, not of losing me, but of Daniel returning. I swallowed hard. "So all those years, mocking me, keeping me small, it was because he didn't want me connected to you." He was trying to hide his own shame. Daniel's hand slipped over mine, warm and grounding. "Exactly. He tried to bury his mistake by burying you. But you're not his weakness, Emily. You never were. You're his reminder that he can't erase the past." Tears burned at the corners of my eyes. But they weren't from sadness. They were from the power of finally seeing the truth. By the time we reached our penthouse, the city skyline glittering in the distance, my phone was already buzzing nonstop. Calls from Rachel, from Mom, even from Dad. I ignored them all. But then one message came through that made my chest tighten. "Emily, please come back. We need to talk. It's not what you think." Daniel glanced at the screen, then at me. "Do you want to go back?" I stared at the message, my chest rising and falling with the weight of it. For a moment, the old Emily, the one who longed for acceptance, who would have run back to prove herself, whispered in my ear. But then I remembered the sneers, the laughter, the way they fed off my humiliation like it was dinner entertainment. "No," I said firmly. "I don't want their explanations. I don't want their excuses. They showed me who they are, and tonight, I showed them who I've become." Daniel's eyes softened, pride flickering across his face. "That's my wife." The next morning, though, the storm reached a peak. News had spread, because of course Rachel couldn't keep her mouth shut. I woke up to headlines flashing across my phone. "Business tycoon Daniel Carter spotted with secret wife, Emily Carter." Paparazzi photos were everywhere, Daniel standing beside me in the driveway. My family's stunned faces in the background. My father's voice message came next, shaky and broken. "Emily, you don't understand what this means for us. For the family. Please, you have to fix this." I almost laughed. "For us? No, this had never been about us. It had always been about him." By noon, my family showed up at our building. The doorman called up, warning us. Daniel arched an eyebrow, but I nodded. I wanted this. I wanted the final confrontation. When we entered the lobby, they were waiting. Richard, pale and desperate. Margaret clutching her purse like it was a shield. And Rachel, eyes red, mascara streaked from crying. My father stepped forward first. "Emily, listen. I know I made mistakes, but you don't understand the weight of what's happening. If people find out about my past with Daniel..." I cut him off, my voice sharp. "This isn't about your reputation anymore, Dad. It's about mine. For years you made me your scapegoat, your family's joke. And all along, you were hiding your own failures." Richard's lips trembled, but he had no defense. Rachel reached for me then, her voice weak. "I'm sorry, Emily, I really am. I thought mocking you made me strong. But last night, seeing you with him, I realized I was just jealous. You found love, and I..." She broke off, tears spilling down her cheeks. For a moment, the old ache in my chest stirred. But Daniel's steady presence beside me reminded me of the truth. Apologies meant nothing without change. I straightened my shoulders. You all had years to show me kindness. Years to treat me with respect. And you chose cruelty instead. You don't get to rewrite that history just because you finally saw the man standing beside me. Daniel placed his hand gently on the small of my back, his voice calm but final. Emily doesn't need your approval, and she never will again. The weight of his words hung heavy in the air. My father's eyes dropped to the floor. My mother's lips pressed tight. Rachel sobbed quietly, but I didn't move to comfort her. Not this time. I turned, my heels clicking against the marble as I walked toward the elevator with Daniel at my side. And as the doors slid shut, I felt it, an unshakable certainty. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the family's disappointment. I wasn't the joke. I was the one who walked away, leaving them in silence. And I wasn't walking alone.